If you like what you watch, then don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Twitter for the latest updates on The More Show. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel for new weekly television and radio shows.
The comments and views expressed on The More Show are those of the people that make them and do not necessarily reflect the views of Kevin Moore, The More Show, or this radio station and its affiliates or sponsors.
Welcome to another edition of The More Show, which is sponsored by the UFO Matrix magazine. I'm Kevin Moore, and today I'm about to be joined by Sir Patrick Moore. Now, Sir Patrick Moore was born on the 4th of March 1923 in what was then the little Middlesex village of Pinner. At the age of 6 months, he and his parents moved to Sussex, where he has lived ever since, not counting the war years where he served in the RAF and a brief time spent in Northern Ireland. Since the 50s, Patrick has concentrated upon the studies of the moon. In 1959, the Russians used his charts to correlate the first Lunik 3 pictures of the far side of the moon, and he was involved in the lunar mapping before the NASA Apollo missions. Patrick has also written over 60 books on astronomy, and since 1957 he has presented all but one of the monthly Sky at Night programs. This last fact has earned Patrick a place in the Guinness Book of Records as the longest serving television presenter. The show aired 6 months before the launch of Sputnik 1 and way before the space race. The Sky at Night program has inspired successive generations of stargazers. Patrick is also a self-taught musician and a talented composer. He has displayed his xylophone-playing skills at the Royal Variety Performance, and he has also a love for the game of cricket and has played for the Lord Taverners. Astronomy remains his first love, and he has no plans to retire from it. Over his illustrious life, Patrick has received a whole host of prestigious awards. In 2001, Patrick received a knighthood from the Queen, and in the same year he won a BAFTA for his services to television, and became a member of the Royal Society. Sir Patrick, welcome to the show.
Nice to hear you.
Now, you've been described as a British national treasure, and I want to start at the beginning. I mean, you were born in 1923.
A long time ago,
and you grew up in Sussex. Your father was a captain in World War I. What memories do you have of your father?
Well, he was a most unlucky man. He joined the army at the First World War. He went through the trenches. He won the MC, became an acting major, and would certainly have risen to the rest and become a brigadier. But sadly, he also swallowed a lung full of German gas and was never very fit afterwards. And he died just after the last war. So I really have much more we all did together, of course, but
yes.
I was very close to my mother.
Okay, now you were very close to your mother. Now, she was a trained singer and a talented artist. Is this where your love of composing music came from?
No, she wasn't a composer. Before the First World War, she went to Switzerland and was trained as a soprano by Sabatini and Clarke. And before she finished her training, she offered a lead in the Italian Grand Opera. The First World War came along. She married my father, army officer, and never actually did it, but she was good enough. She had the music. She wasn't a trained artist, but she was a really good one. I got the music. I did not get the art.
Now, was it true that a book that your mother had sparked your interest in astronomy at the age of 6?
Well, I picked up a small book, which I can see from where I am now in my study, called The Story of the Solar System by G.F. Chambers. I was 7 years old. It wasn't a boy's book, and I had that book. Nevertheless, my reading was all right. I read it through, and frankly, I was hooked. So I decided that this was in my line, because my education was completely and utterly messed up from no one's fault. The idea was prep school, Eton, Cambridge. I never got near any of them. Because up to the age of 15, I was laid low with a heart problem. Then the war came along. I could get around by that time, and I had my Cambridge place ready, but I'm down to admit that I swindled my way into the RAF and flew. So I did that. At the end of the war, I came out. My Cambridge place was still there, but I didn't want to take government grants somehow, so I thought I'd do some writing for him way through. Caught on, and writing took over, and that was that. I was swamped.
Okay, now you did join the RAF. Now, what was your time like in the RAF? Because you were a pilot, wasn't you?
Navigator. Navigator from Bomber Command.
Now, in World War II, you did get to meet the Wright brothers. I believe it was Orville Wright.
Well, I went at the start of the war. I was sent out to Canada to learn how to navigate, right? In the middle of the course, I had week leave, and I went down to New York. And there I met several interesting people. There was a little conference there, and the Wright brothers were there. Orville Wright, Will was dead, of course. Orville Wright was there. I had a great day of meeting Orville Wright. Also there was Einstein. I met him too. That was a great trip, believe me. Will Wright died in 1912, so I didn't see him.
Well, that's right. Now, was it not true that Orville hated the idea of the airplanes being used for to drop bombs?
Absolutely right. And he did very little flying after 1920. He was, after all, the great pioneer. And the first airman, the first spaceman, and the first man on the moon could have met face to face. They didn't. They couldn't have done because their lives overlapped.
Incredible, incredible. Now, you mentioned there that you had an encounter with Albert Einstein. What did you think of Einstein?
Exactly what I expected. Charming, old-worldly, courteous, just what I thought he would be. Interesting there, I was at the conference then, I was invited to it, and the little reception officer, again, he and I were there, about 20 people. And as you know, he was a great violinist, a really good one. And he had his violin he'd been playing. Somebody said, well, do you know your violin? He said, oh, I play with the Swan. And there was a piano there, Saint-Saëns Swan. I knew the accompaniment. So I accompanied Einstein. And oh, for a tape. There weren't any tapes on the tape for here.
That's right, there were no tapes. I mean, what it would have been to record that. And what was, would you still class him as a modern-day scientific genius?
Oh, the absolute tops. The greatest man since Newton, that's for sure. We have our great men now, but I didn't think him ready to equal Einstein.
And would you say he was very approachable?
Absolutely. They're charming, old-world, courteous. Exactly what I expected him to be.
Okay. Now, Patrick, you never married.
My girl was killed in the war, so that was that.
Right. Okay. So you never married because there was someone out there for you that died. Is that right?
Yes. Didn't come through. I came through. She didn't. She was in the wrong place when the bomb fell. So sadly that was that. So I'm a very reluctant bachelor. So I've got no family. But these things, well, you've got to accept it. Well, you must make the best of a bad job. There we are.
That's right. I mean, do you still think of her often?
Every hour.
Okay.
Various.
Okay, well, moving on.
Yes.
Patrick, you had two sort of academic papers published by the British Astronomical Association in 1957, and then was invited to write a book about the moon. Now, this led you to your famous show, The Sky at Night.
They weren't quite connected. My first publication was back to age 13 in the BAA Journal, Small Craterlets in the Mare Crisium. Then after the war, I began writing. I wrote some books. And one was a BBC producer, Michael, who's now dead, sadly, and he was looking around for someone to do a program on astronomy in a way that hadn't quite been done before. He read a book of mine and wondered, could I be the chap? So he asked me to see him. So up I went to Lime Grove in London and saw him, and we talked. We created a program called The Sky at Night, and BBC said try it out and put it on the air once every 4 weeks for 3 months and see how it went. When that was 53 years ago, we're still going.
I know. Could you have imagined yourself doing it 50 years on?
I had no idea. I couldn't hold it.
And what would you say the key is to the longevity of the show? Is it the subject?
Purely the subject, nothing to do with me. That program just caught on. It's the subject, not me. There's so much to say. And it's great fun to do, Amit. Right? In fact, I'm going to record a program this week about comets.
And would you say there's a sky at night which stands out?
Oh, I do indeed. As you know, the moon goes around the Earth, and the same time it takes to spin on its axis. So it keeps the same side turned towards us the whole time. The other side of the moon we can't see from here. But the moon rocks very slowly to and fro, and tiny bits of the very far side come into view. Well, before Apollo, I was one of the moon map team. I was mapping these areas. And I came down there, and one thing caught my eye, a thing called the far side sea. Well, Russians actually use my charts, and I've been talking to them, and they said as soon as they got the first photographs of the far side of the moon, they let me know. And they sent their probe, Lunar 3, around the moon and sent back the first pictures and kept their word with them to me. And they came through, and I just started a live Sky at Night program. And I looked at the order and I said, look, the first photographs of the far side of the moon are just going to come through. So just keep an eye and we'll see what happens. And through they came. That was a great thrill. And I reckon I what called the Maury Criterion under reverse writing. I gave a commentary. So that was the show that always stands out in my mind.
Incredible. And would you agree that astronomy is the only science that lets the amateur make very much more contributions?
Yes. It's one of the very few sciences where the amateur can make a really good contribution and does. But that's the person either can't do, hasn't got time to do, or doesn't want to do. And amateurs do around professionals for some things. So certainly there's a tremendous collaboration there. No distinction at all.
Yeah. And do you still use your telescopes, Patrick?
Trouble is, during the war, I got my spine smashed around, and it was all right for a bit, and they said that any time after I was 30, it would slip. It didn't until I was 78, that's 10 years ago. Then, sadly, it did. So now I can't get into my observatory. Others use it, but sadly I can't.
Right, okay.
10 years ago I was playing cricket.
Yeah, how quickly time goes, Patrick? How many telescopes do you have, roughly, Patrick?
At the moment, my big 15-inch telescope in this observatory, a 12.5-inch and a 5-inch refractor. So sadly, I can't now use them, but other people do, and they're in use almost every clear night.
And do you still have your first telescope, and is it still usable?
I have indeed, my 3-inch refractor. Haven't had it 11. It's in the hall now. It's a very good telescope. It's very useful too.
And it just goes to show that telescopes don't die.
No, they don't. They don't deteriorate either. I mean, a refractor won't deteriorate at all unless you actually play football.
Well, I suppose if you look after them and treat them well, they'll last a lifetime, won't they?
Oh, absolutely. No question about that.
So, did you not use your 12.5-inch reflector telescopes then to map the moon?
I was involved in the Apollo moon mapping. I was one of a very large team. I used my own telescopes, my 15-inch, my 12.5-inch. Also, I went to some of the world's major observatories and used their big telescopes, particularly the low-L telescope at Flagstaff in Arizona, where I spent a lot of time, and the big telescope over the Paris Observatory.
Right.
I use those too, but combination of all. See, don't forget, I'm an amateur. I look at things.
Yes, exactly. And you did make a moon map that was used by the NASA for the Apollo missions.
I was a very small, very minor, it was a very large team, don't get me wrong.
I bet you was important. I bet you was.
No, I wasn't. I'm not it.
Well, why don't we have any extra large or really big telescopes over here in the UK?
In here, because the climate's not right. You've got to have good climates for big telescopes. Over here, we haven't got that. Too much cloud, too much damp. So our best telescopes are in the Canary Islands or in Hawaii. And that is sensible. Mind you, there have been disasters. The Royal Greenwich Observatory was founded by order of King Charles II. And in 1999, it was killed by the then Labour government. They destroyed the Royal Greenwich Observatory, our flagship observatory. Just closed it down like that. And words fail me.
that is a problem with the politics and astronomy. I mean, just going back a second there, we will come to that, Patrick, but one thing is, light pollution. Now, that affects astronomy. Is there anything that can be done
light
about...
pollution does affect, of course, it affects everything. And these big naked lights, they're dangerous. A big naked light will create a pool of darkness underneath where evildoers can lurk. I think the situation can be improved, and there are some areas now where it is being improved. And there's one tree I know in Southampton where they've got good shielded lights, and the street itself is well lit and the light is perfectly dark. Because it does cost a bit more, and councils are wary of doing that. But of course, have too many lights and too many people.
Yes. Well, I suppose, radio telescopes can be affected by, electronic pollution, which we can't see.
They're all better off. And the big radio telescope can operate here. George Bank was the first great one. There was talk even of closing that, and there was such an outcry that even the Labour government didn't dare go through it.
Now, one question I've got for you, Patrick. You've mentioned there that telescopes are, need to be high due to light pollution, but also isn't there turbulence in the Earth's atmosphere that causes pollution as well? Yeah.
The higher up you go, the better off you are. That's why the world's best telescopes are located on high altitudes, on mountain tops, so the Canary Islands, Los Angeles, Hawaii, and so on.
Right.
You can't sit down here. The higher you are, the less air there is above you, and the better the seeing. So that's fair enough. The higher you are, and of course we have our space telescopes now. Hubble Space Telescope the first.
Yes, Hubble. Now, didn't you meet Edwin Hubble?
I did, yes.
From whom the Hubble telescope is named after.
Oh, I did, yeah. He didn't die of life. So I met him quite a number of times, and I liked Hubble. So I was only a young man. He was the oldest man by then, but I got on very well with Hubble.
Very nice guy, yeah?
I reckon he is. A lot of people didn't.
Astronomical research in the UK, does have a very good worldwide reputation with people like yourselves. Where does, UK astronomy research continue now with all the cutbacks that are happening?
Most of our main theoretical researchers go abroad, simple as that. The brain drain. And these fools at the top can't see it.
No, they can't, can they?
I'm not a researcher. I rank as an amateur.
Okay, but do you think we should be spending more money on astronomy in the UK?
I think the best thing we can spend money on, particularly we're spending all our money in muddling around in Afghanistan or places like that, where we've no right to be, most of them want to be in a totally unwinnable, unjustified war. So we're going to spending all our money on that, but not going to get anywhere. I mean, medical research is being handicapped too. Until we get a really sensible government, let's go on.
Right. I mean, should we be spending more money looking for asteroids, for example?
Well, that is being done. The trouble is, a small asteroid coming towards you, all right, but you might be very first, but somebody once said to me, if you saw a mile-wide asteroid coming toward the Earth with a certain chance of collision, what would you do? I said, well, repeat after me, Our Father.
Yes.
The chances of our being hit by a major asteroid are not nil, but they are slight. And a small one might be able to divert, but the big one, certainly, we can't. But certainly, we're keeping an eye on. There's one called Apophis that will make a fairly close operation in 2028 and again in the 2030s. I won't be here to see that. It shouldn't hit us, but we might have to try and divert it. I don't know. We'll wait to see.
Now, what's your opinion with regard to the recent report in the media about NASA's warning of a peak of the sun's magnetic energy cycle around 2013, the solar flares, in other words, that could damage our electronic infrastructure? Have you ever looked into this?
Yes, so the point is, what you've got hold of here is a totally crackpot prediction by the Aztecs or somebody. We have a solar maximum every 11 years. Nothing unusual about this one. There will be a maximum, we should be. But also in the year 2000, there's no reason to suppose it will be exceptional. This, again, is a number of crackpots trying to whip things up. It's not NASA.
Okay. Now, one of your close friends was Arthur C. Clarke. Do you have any treasured memories of him?
Oh, I knew Arthur very well for many years. In fact, I first met him. I went to a meeting of the British Interplanetary Society I just joined. I was a 13-year-old. Arthur was 17. And he came and made some names to me, and we remained friends after that. So I've worked with him all together. Oddly enough, we'd never actually written anything together until quite recently. And that dreadful storm that they had out in Sri Lanka, where he lived.
Oh,
and
yes.
They wanted money for that. So Arthur and I got together and wrote a small book about asteroids and sold it on behalf of the charity there. And it made about £30,000, I think.
Wonderful. Yeah, you're talking about the tsunami disaster. That's right, yes.
Yes.
You did do an introduction on one of his books, did you not?
Oh, I haven't. He did tonight. The two books came out on the same day, one by me and one by him. Mine had them prefaced by him. His had them prefaced by me.
And what did you think of Arthur C. Clarke's work, for example, A 2001 Space Odyssey?
And that was a great film. Could be even greater because Kubrick sliced off the last 20 minutes, unfortunately. I may have made one minor contribution. I was having dinner with Arthur in London, that was nothing at all, and they were talking about music for the spaceship conference. I said, well, try the Blue Danube. Well, of course they did. Whether that was due to me, I don't know. Anyhow, they did so.
Incredible. Incredible.
And many of our predictions have come true. Many haven't, but he got a lot right.
He did, actually, because wasn't he one of the first ones to predict the landing of man on the moon by 1970 or before?
Yes, he got it right. We were talking about that. He was right, I was wrong. First man on the moon, I saw sometime mid-1980s, before 1970. He was right, I was wrong.
What do you think about his, his obsession with life out there?
I'm sure there is life, however. This way, our galaxy, 100,000 million stars. We can see 1,000 million galaxies. That's only part of them. So the number of stars with planets is phenomenally great. And there must be life there, but it's a long way away from us. And there's no chance of our getting in contact with it, except possibly by radio. One day we will. And I hope that if there is life there, it may be far more advanced than our life. It might teach us something.
Well, yeah, I think we need a bit of teaching sometimes, don't we?
We do indeed.
We do, that's right. Now, Patrick, looking back over your career in astronomy, you've lived through some pioneering days. Now, what was your greatest, most memorable moment?
I think, again, the other side of the moon, and then, of course, the actual lunar landings, because I was confirmed that all the commentaries there, and these were great days. From Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin will never be forgotten.
I mean, you were a BBC presenter for the Apollo, for all the Apollo missions. Looking back at Apollo 11's mission to the moon, there was no room for mistakes, was there?
No, whatever. And they only just made it. We got the actual mapping right, but Neil saw there was a dangerous crater, so he brought it on manually and had only a very few seconds worth of fuel left. With a magnificent piece of piloting. Mind you, it was stopped with Apollo 17, and I think it was right to stop there, because if we'd gone on, we'd made landing in other parts of the moon and got back new information, but probably nothing outstanding. And sooner or later, something would have gone wrong. And we shouldn't send back to the moon now, and there is provision for rescue. And that is not where they're at. And I think if we're waiting to go, I think probably the next man on the moon will be a Chinaman.
I think you might be right there, because China is taking over in the space race, and so is India.
Yes, I think China's going further. I may be wrong, but I don't know much either of those. I've been over most of the world.
Yes.
But China, I've been to Japan, not China, and I've missed out on India, but China didn't want to go there.
Now, so do you think we should go back to the moon to learn any more?
I think we should do. I think we probably will. And a lunar base will be of immense value to mankind, and it's got to be purely international. That's vital.
Okay.
Mars, that's quite different. People say get to Mars this century, I'm not so sure. The main problem here is radiation. Be in space for weeks and subject to radiation from the sun and the space, and we don't yet know how to protect ourselves. And until we solve the radiation problem, we won't get to Mars. It may happen quite quickly, I don't know, but that is, to me, is the main obstacle.
Okay, so the radiation's a massive problem, but
it is indeed.
that goes to my next question, really. I mean, should we just be sending unmanned probes out, or do you think it has to be a manned mission?
The unmanned probes have got to come first. They'll tell us a great deal. After all, much of what we know about the planets is due to probes. There's Opportunity probe crawling around Mars now, for example. And all we know about the outer planets really does come from probes. So they've got to go first, and we've got to follow. But I think sending men out beyond the Earth-Moon system is going to take a long time. If we solve the radiation problem, yes, but I don't know how to go about that.
In the studio on the night of the Apollo moon landing, you must have been, broadcasting for continuously, maybe for hours on end. What was it like?
11 and a half hours.
11 and a half hours.
As again, I was frankly nervous. You see what happened? No one knew quite what they were going to find. We thought we had, that the moon's surface was solid enough to bear the weight of a spacecraft. I don't know who would be maintaining that from observational grounds. But had they made a faulty landing, they couldn't have got back. So when I heard Neil's voice coming through, the Eagle has landed, I felt immense relief. I think that was echoed all over the world.
Because again, let's go back to what you said before. You said I think you said there was no provision for rescue in any case. No. Now, what was Neil Armstrong like? Did he tell you that the moon was more hospitable than the Arctic? I mean, what was the guy like?
I like Neil Armstrong very much indeed. He's obviously will be any amount of encouragement resource. He's a good scientist, and he knows exactly what he's doing. So he was a very worthy first man on the moon. He and Buzz Aldrin are two different people. I like them both. Neil doesn't like publicity. Buzz, in the best sense of the word, is a publicist. So they're quite different, but they're very worthy first men on the moon.
Now, Apollo 13 only survived as it was only on its way to the moon. Now, had it got to the moon and had problems, it could have very well been a different scenario, couldn't it?
Exactly. Well, I normally stepped to the BBC these things. I'd said that I voluntarily stayed back. If there's trouble in communication with here in America, if I'm in the studio, I can hold it till we get it back. And that I did. Have to come fast. On this occasion, I made my last broadcast of the day. I will come home, so I'd come back tomorrow morning. So I just driven home, walked through my front door, phone rang, come back, the trouble was spacecraft. And it was touch and go, believe me. And halfway through, I talked to the head of NASA. Not on the air, not live, but I talked on the line I had. I said, look, are you going to get them back? And he said, if nothing else goes wrong, we'll get them back. But we've come to the end of our resources. And they had. Luckily, nothing else did go wrong.
Did you ever see the movie Apollo 13?
I did. Have you seen it? Have you seen it yourself?
Yes, it is actually. I thought it was quite a good movie.
They were rescued by a destroyer. Remember?
That's right.
You know the captain of the destroyer.
Yes.
Who that was?
Oh, Lovell was it? Lovell was it?
Yes, of course it was.
Yes, of course.
He wanted to be in his own film.
That's not surprising, is it? Now, Patrick, you did get to meet Wernher von Braun, the Nazi rocket scientist who...
I know, interesting that was making the V2 for Hitler. And in America wasn't. In 1943, we bombed Peenemünde, where he was. I wasn't on that raid, but I might have been. So it happened that I wasn't. But after the war, von Braun went to America. I met him, because we were on first-name terms. And he was a pure scientist. I must admit, I don't like Germans one little bit. If you saw the entire German nation sinking into the sea, I'd try and push it down. But von Braun was a pure scientist, and I'll give him full marks. He was working for science.
And do you think that he was working on some very highly classified technology?
Well, he was. I mean, he was the great genius of the early rocket program. There were two, von Braun in America and Korolev in Russia, the chief designer. And those two always wanted to meet and never did. They were the two great men of the early rocket days.
Yeah. And if it wasn't for the von Braun, basically he was a scientist who forever changed America's evolution in technology for the space travel.
Quite true. If they actually didn't entirely follow von Braun's advice. The shuttle was not perfect, and if they followed von Braun in detail, it would have been more so. The shuttle, after all, more or less finished. We rely on the Russians at the moment.
That's right. Can I ask you, what did you talk about when you met him?
All kinds of a whole lot. Social and scientific, but we got on very well.
Yeah. I mean, some would class him as a war criminal because he was involved in the slave workers, but yet again...
Actually, he wasn't.
But he wasn't,
They had the Dora camp as a Pinham went up, but von Braun was not involved in that.
Okay.
He had to join the Nazi Party. And what his Nazi was just once, so he had to join the Nazi Party. Well, so did the present Pope. The Pope was the hit for youth.
Yes, that's
von
true.
Braun was very reluctant Nazi. He said, you know what, he was uniform once.
Right, okay.
So I would adore him, and he certainly was not a war criminal.
Now, what cosmonauts have you met, Patrick?
Most of them, I think. I met the Russians too.
What was the original cosmonaut like, Yuri Gagarin?
Well, I could talk to him. I can't quite remember why I have, because I can't talk Russian. He could not English. We must have talked in French, I think, but certainly I met him quite a number of times and liked him very much. He was killed in an ordinary aircraft crash.
Patrick, when people say to you, why go into the universe, there's nothing out there, they tend not to think that the space race research is linked to all other sciences, including medical science. Even today we live in an age that is still influenced by the space race.
Well, just like what's happened in Chile. They had the miners down there. They got them up by this this tunnel. And the capsule brought them up was designed by NASA. You see it, cuts everywhere.
Was it really? I didn't know that.
Yes, that's what people didn't realize. And NASA gave a hand to the design of the thing that brought those miners up.
Exactly. It's
and
everywhere.
Space medicine is of tremendous importance, and a medical station on the moon will be of immense value.
So, in your opinion, it's very important to...
I do.
Yeah, okay. And, you've mentioned before that you think, Mars should be where we're heading towards now. But, if we find any traces of life on Mars that isn't, I suppose, Earth-contaminated, then there must be life out there.
Exactly. If we find any trace of life on Mars and can prove it's not a contamination, it will show that where there's a world that can support life, it will. You see, there must be millions upon millions of planets like the Earth in the universe. We know some of these now. And they could support life. But if life can appear, will it? That's what we can't prove. If there's any trace of life on Mars, there will be a strong pointer. It won't be a proof. It will be a pointer.
What's your hunch?
I'm 50-50. I think it'll be there. I hope it will be, but we should know before long. We want a sample and return probe. The Americans do plan one there, and I'm sure the Chinese will, and then we'll definitely know.
And what would it mean for mankind, Patrick?
A total change of outlook, I think. We realize, or we know now, we're a very small part of the cosmos. If there's other life up there, we're a very important life too, probably a very low life form. It would change our whole attitude, I feel, and the most important discovery we could possibly make. I say, I hope it comes in my time. I haven't got many years left, but you will certainly see it.
Yes, what about the people, though, Patrick, that say it's, dangerous to make contact?
I think that's rubbish, and I'll tell you why. If there's life up there, a civilization that is capable of interstellar travel, they'll prove one thing. They've gone to the stage where they have the scientific know-how to wipe each other out and haven't done it. We are going through that stage now. We have the scientific means to wipe each other out, and we haven't got the civilization not to do it. We're less civilized now in a way than the Athens of Pericles. And it depends on the way you choose your leaders. I must say, looking around our present world leaders inspires me with a feeling of no confidence at all. That's wrong. Others may do far better. But it's taken no enough to get here. they put war far behind them. And remember the wise words of Percival Lowell, who was wrong about Mars, right on this, I think, that war on us is a survival from savage times, and affects now the boyish and unthinking elements of the nation. He did right.
So I suppose, Mars is very important, as we spoke about, and if we don't find life there, do you think it's possible that it could have supported some kind of life there before?
It was certainly capable of it. Mars wants a warm, wet world, but the trouble is, Mars is smaller than the Earth, formed about the same time, but the lower gravity lost its main atmosphere and water more quickly. So if life appeared there, it probably didn't have time to evolve very far. I'm prepared to evolve that Martian life did evolve to the plant stage, but I think Martians know there wasn't time before conditions there became unfavorable.
And obviously we've sent many probes out to Mars, and one of the famous sort of probes was the Viking probe, and we captured that strange picture on Mars, which we class as the face on Mars.
Oh yeah, it was great fun, wasn't it? It's a perfectly ordinary rock, of course, wasn't it? Always what they call the crazy gang. They're great fun. The world would be a poorer place without them.
Okay, well, with regards to present-day research and future projects planned, what sort of appeals you? What excites you nowadays about astronomy?
I think the more we find out, the more we realize, the more there is to find out. So new discoveries are now being made almost every day. I've got 2 books by a pair of my grandfathers, Sir Robert Ball, one published 1890, the other in 1915. And there's not much difference. And now, anything published a year ago is out of date. I know this. I spent the last 10 years or so writing my data book on astronomy. It's very nearly ready. And I've been updating my updates. And I did some days last month, and I got to update it already. The pace of science is quite amazing. And, of course, the more we put in it, the further we'll go. And who knows what lies around the corner? We could have the ability to make ourselves a great civilization in the indefinite future. Whether we will depends upon ourselves.
Well, I suppose one thing that's going to push space travel is the space tourism.
Well, we'll see what happens now.
Because we have Virgin Galactic about to launch their starship in a few years to take people to the upper atmosphere.
Yes, it's all local everything. We're talking about the Earth-Moon system.
Well, yes, but I mean...
Earth and Moon, all right, we have bases on the Moon.
Well, sure.
If we solve the radiation problem, we can get to Mars. But traveling to other stars, that's beyond us with our present means. Rockets are no good. They're far too slow. If we get to travel to planets of another solar system, light years away, we could have some entirely new method that does not involve material space travel. And when you know what space warps, time warps, teleportation, thought travel, that is sheer science fiction. But remember, television was science fiction not so long ago. And these things can come true. Whether they will depends upon ourselves. And one more war will wipe out civilization.
Okay, now that's the problem with science, isn't it? I mean, and trying to find these answers. Every problem you solve raises a whole new host of ones, doesn't it?
Certainly does. That's becoming more and more evident as we go on. But we're learning all the time. And the basics we've got right, I think, now. We've got the basics right, and we could follow on them, but whether we will depends entirely upon ourselves. The trouble is that science is always misused by the politicians. All the rights. This is aeroplane is just one example of that. Von Braun's rocket is another.
So I suppose then, with regards to space travel, you would see man's limitations as basically the ability to travel without conventional rockets. So
I would say rockets may take us to the edge of the solar system. They won't take us any further. There could be some fundamental breakthrough that not involve materials from space level. I said then you go into science fiction, but science fiction has a habit of turning into science fact.
Okay, now moving on slightly there. We're talking about getting into space. I mean, how do you get your mind around the scale of the universe, Patrick?
Well, the scale of the universe is immense. I was to draw a line an inch long, put the Earth on one end and the Sun on the other, so an inch apart. How far away is the nearest star? Answer, over 4 miles. And that is the nearest star. We can't comprehend these immense spaces, and we can't comprehend infinity. For example, go back to the start of the universe, the Big Bang. If the Big Bang happens, then what happened before that? You've got to say, there wasn't a before. If you don't like that, you've got to imagine a period of time that has no beginning, and you can't take that either. So we're stuck either way. I can't understand it. I can't put it into plain words. Neither could Einstein. I know because I asked him.
Well, that's the thing. How do you get your head around before time? I mean, after you've studied the...
I simply don't.
No, you don't. No. Well, obviously you've been studying astronomy for so many years now. Has it led you to believe that there's maybe a purpose behind the universe?
Well, I think it must be. I don't get it. The universe is not pointless, I don't think, but I don't think it depends how much life there is. And if we are a very low form of life, the entire situation changes. I think it may well be, but I can't prove it, of course.
So do you think there could be a greater intelligence behind it, perhaps?
I don't know.
Now, you've met Stephen Hawking, haven't you?
Yes, I have.
And did you buy into his theories? I mean, could you accept his theories?
He is a great mathematician. I must say I knew him when he was mobile. He had his own voice. He is a great mathematician. I am not, so I can't possibly question or comment upon his mathematical theories, but I haven't got that kind of mathematics. But certainly he's one of our mathematical leaders, and again, many of his theories may be true, many may not. Time will tell, but he's a great pioneer, a very great man.
UFOlogy. I mean, you've touched this in your autobiography. You spoke about the flap of UFOs when they was going on many moons ago. What's your views on UFOlogy?
They're great fun. I meant to say, when the flat earthers are, flying saucers, of course, absolute rubbish. But they're quite harmless.
Yeah.
Somebody once said, what would I do if a flying saucer landed in my garden? A little green man said, take me to your leader. What would I say? I would say, good afternoon, tea or coffee? Please come with me to the nearest TV studio.
Yeah, but would an advanced civilization make contact?
Exactly, that's what we don't know. I say it might do. An advanced civilization may make contact. If it does so, it will do so in the best way. It may decide not to, but as I say, if there's a civilization capable of crossing interstellar space, it's bound to be more advanced than we are, and could teach us a great deal.
What do you think about someone like Dr. Ed Mitchell, who came on UK radio to announce that he had information that that the US government was involved in some sort of contact with some sort of extraterrestrial beings? I'm
afraid when they come to cover-ups and contacts, I've taken with a very large pinch of cosmic salt. I must say that.
Had he broke his silence, or had he gone crazy?
For I won't comment on this, but I say conspiracy theories to me they're just fun.
What advice would you give to anyone, Patrick, who wants to be a professional astronomer?
All you need to do is to read up, get your facts right, start observing, and then generally contact your local astronomical society or the BAA. Be a professional. You must have a science degree. It can be in physics, it can be in pure astronomy, but to be a professional now, you must have a degree. To be an amateur, you needn't have a degree. So it depends what kind of thing you want to be. But if you want to be an astronomer, as a professional, what are your maths like? If you're not mathematically minded, keep it as a hobby. And that's what I do myself, because I'm not a good mathematician, I know it. So I'm keeping it as a hobby.
Patrick, is there any field of study within astronomy that perhaps you now regret not being involved with, or wish you had the opportunity to have followed?
I think I've done what my limited powers were enabled me to do. I've observed the moon and planets. I hope I played a part there. They say I'm not a researcher. I haven't got that kind of brain. I've done what I think personally I can do, but others can do far more than I will. And my main job has been to try and interest other people and bring them into it, which I've done with my books and with television programs. That's all I can be able to do, but many more people can do much more than I would ever be able to do.
Okay. And I understand that before the hunting ban was around, you found it quite deliberately cruel.
People who enjoy seeing animals torn to pieces must come from literally another planet. How they can do it, I know not. And the hunting people I have the greatest contempt for.
And one thing we have got in common, and not just the stars, is obviously that you're a cat person as well.
I have a cat on my here at the moment. I'm very much a cat person. I have two lovely cats. Jeannie and Ptolemy are with me now. They're lovely cats. Jeannie is black and white and 8. Ptolemy is black and 4. And they're lovely.
And I suppose the house is made for the cats, isn't it?
We have other places. This house is run entirely for the benefit of our cats. People think it's a joke.
No, I don't. I think that's the way it should be. You know, the cats.
No, I quite agree.
The cats are gods. So, two very proud days in your life, not too long ago neither. Now, where one of them was the 2001 knighthood, which won you a BAFTA as well. Now, didn't Buzz Aldrin present you with that award?
He did indeed. A very proud day. And the other, he made a fellow of the Royal Society. When I heard about it, I said there's got to be some mistake here, but there wasn't. That was a very proud moment.
That's right.
After all, I haven't actually done anything myself. I've merely talked about it to other people. I haven't done anything.
And that was at Leicester University. And now they do have a wonderful space department. Yeah, astronomy department. Sorry.
Have I been there? Because down here in Madison, of Chichester, we have our own planetarium, the South Downs Planetarium, which is a very good one, and does immense good. Schools kind of expect. We could do more, but we haven't got the money, and the government and the lottery gave us nothing. So we had to do it ourselves. That's for our own people, so we are in the background.
So maybe times are changing with the universities where they're putting a bit more money into the degree courses for astronomy.
Well, I think with some of all the Nicky Mouse courses, media studies and that kind of thing.
You mean the one that I'm doing? Yeah. No, I know exactly where you're coming from when you say that. I do understand. So now another passion of yours, I've got to speak about your music, because haven't you also played in front of the Queen? Yes,
I'm a xylophonist. I played in the Royal Grand Performance. I've written quite a lot. The last thing I wrote before this vicious spinal thing hit me, the band of the Royal Paratroop Brigade wanted a new march, so I wrote the March Out of the Sky. It's one of their regular marches. I heard it on television this week, so I've composed quite a lot. I've never had a music lesson in my life.
No, and again, where does that music talent come from? Would you say that's from your mother?
Yes, I've got one thing. There's no credit to me. Absolutely no credit at all to me, but I've got it. Perfect pitch, perfect time.
That's where you've got it. You've got that perfect pitch, and yeah, that's a gift. That is definitely a gift.
Well, it is. If you've got it, you haven't.
That's right. So, Patrick, have you ever been a religious man?
I always say that I don't talk about religion, football, religion, and politics. I was once asked, though, could I give my definition of hell?
Go for it.
So I'll tell you what hell is. It's bowling to a left-hander on a dead pitch with a Pakistani umpire, and I've done it, so I know.
But what do your feelings tell you on life after death? I mean, do you think there's more to this world than meets the eye?
Yes, I do. If life began and ended here, it was pointless. It's not pointless. I'm sure that when our bodies die, our brains, I'm quite sure, don't. But ask me more in 10 years, and I'll tell you.
Well, come back to haunt me, and we'll prove it.
Certainly.
Patrick, any closing comments to the audience?
No, been good to talk to you. I'm sorry my voice wasn't up to scratch, but I have just got this rush of bugs, so my voice isn't as clear as it should be.
Patrick, thank you so much for joining us today.
Nice to talk to you.
To find out more information on Sir Patrick Moore, go to sirpatrickmoore.com or look up Sir Patrick Moore under past guests on my website, themooreshow.co.uk. Now, do remember that you can now vote for us at the Radio Cardiff Awards show, so if you do enjoy the show, just go to radiocardiff.org and look us up under Best Factual or Featural Programme and just put a quick vote in there for us. So, until next time, be safe.
Visit themooreshow.co.uk/shop to purchase products and services from your favourite past guests. If you're new to this site, you can also catch up on the previous television and radio shows through YouTube and the Moore Show website.